My name is Matt Pinard. I'm the interviewer, and we're here at Richard's home in his backyard, and his home is at 2884 Bayless Drive, Ann Arbor, Michigan. It is about 5 p.m. in the afternoon, and we're going to talk to Richard here about his experience in World War II. And do you want to start with how you got into the military, and where you did your training and what your specialty was? Just some basic details.
Well, as far as I'm concerned, there's some significant dates. The most significant date is the 1st of September 1939. And in case you don't remember, that's when Poland was invaded by the Germans. And so it was the official start of World War II. And at that time, I was a junior. I just finished my junior year, just going to start my senior year in high school. And I was over here in Michigan at a church camp. And when I heard that they had invaded, I knew that the war would really start. Because, see, on June, well, anyway, in high school, I was in the progressive education 8-year study. Probably not important to anybody, but it was a course given by our instructors on the things that they thought we really needed. And for an example, we took a course called Current Events. We didn't have any history, but we have current events. And so we watched the rise of Hitler in Germany. And we didn't have a textbook, we just looked at the newspapers, and when something happened, since I was going to school at the University of Wisconsin high school, we could get professors from the university to come in and tell us about how this had happened in other times and what the outcome would be. So we knew exactly it. It seemed to me that the people didn't understand what was going on in Europe, but we certainly did. I mean, the kids in our class. And so we knew that things were going along, and so on September 1st, I knew I was going to be in the Army. In fact, I decided I probably wouldn't live to be 21 years old. Hmm. Well, so I graduated high school, and then I went on to university, and the war was I mean, things were going along, and we weren't in it. But my dad was called up to service. He'd been in the First World War, and he was by this time a lieutenant colonel in the Michigan-Wisconsin National Guard, 32nd Division. So he was called up, and they were down in Livingston, Louisiana, and in training. Do you mind if I put my glasses on?
Not at all.
I'm having trouble seeing my
Sure.
Well, then I took a course at the university in machine operation. Machine operator, that's what you're called when you're done. And I got a job in Gissel Manufacturing in Madison, Wisconsin. And they were heavily involved in the production of products because they had a turret lathe, a very famous turret lathe, which could be used for all kinds of production everywhere. So I worked there. Oh no, after I got through with this course, I worked there. And we worked 7 days a week, 8 hours a day, and we needed some time off. So they couldn't stop the production, so what we would work would be 8 hours, then 12 hours, then 8 hours, 8 hours, and 12 hours, then 8 hours. And the 12 hours wasn't bad, but the next 8 hours you weren't worth too much. Okay, I was working, and I was making a lot of money, and I even got a tailor-made suit. I mean, Yeah, for a kid coming out of the Depression, that was wonderful. And I was working there, and then came Pearl Harbor. And when Pearl Harbor hit, my dad was in active service, and of course, it really hit us because we knew they were going to go. And we were down in Chicago that day. It was a Sunday, by the way. Well, of course it was a Sunday. That's why they hit it on Sunday. And it wasn't a very pleasant ride back to Madison, Wisconsin. So then I couldn't stand it any longer, and so I enlisted in the Air Corps. I wanted to fly, so I was in cadets, and then they lost our records. I don't know why they lost the records, but they did. For 6 months, I didn't know whether it was coming or going. My buddies were all going in, and I was sitting there waiting for something to happen, you know. Well, finally in February of '43, I was called to active duty, went down to Texas, and because they had lost this big bunch of records, there was a whole flood of us coming in, and they couldn't stand that many cadets, and they washed us out right and left. And so I washed out and went to basic training in good old Texas, and had a wonderful experience of basic training. I think everybody knows about those. We won't go into that.
Which post was it?
Where was I stationed?
Yeah.
Shepherd Field.
Shepherd Field in Texas?
Yeah.
Okay.
Great place.
And what year was that again? 43?
It was in February, when I was February, March, April.
Of 43?
43.
Okay.
And then, because they'd taken a whole bunch of tests, you know, scored high enough that they selected me to go to Denver to take bomb sight automatic pilot training. It was a wonderful school. We started at 2:30 in the morning. We couldn't take any notes. We couldn't take a textbook out of the room. We had to memorize everything.
And that was for obviously classified reasons.
Oh, it was classified secret, yeah. We just, it was a wonderful thing, you know. First of all, we were sitting there and some of the guys would fall asleep. So they took the seats off the back of the chairs, made them into stools, and the guys are still falling asleep. They leaned forward on the table and fall asleep. And they had us standing up, and we could sleep then too. But anyway, it was a wonderful thing.
And you were being trained to learn how to properly sight targets.
No, we were learning how to maintain the bomb sights and the automatic pilots.
Okay, in the aircraft.
In the aircraft.
Okay.
There are 2 sights and 2 automatic pilots made by different companies.
So those planes could be put on automatic pilot as they were going over a target. Is that the idea?
Yeah, that's
okay.
The idea. Yeah. So then, after I got through with school, I went down to Childress, Texas, to a base where they were training bombardiers, and we just maintained the sites there until I was assigned to Blythe, California, when I joined the 18th Bomb Squadron, the 34th Bomb Group.
Okay.
Down there, it was wonderful to be down there because we had the funny little transportation system on the base. It was towed around the base with the 2 benches side by side. So they just pull up, you step on, sit down, and they take off. And we could, it was wonderful to just run around there. We had wonderful meals and stuff. The only thing, it was a little hot. In fact, it gets so hot that the plexiglass would soften, you know, on the things. But we anyway, trained there from early part of 44. And the 13th of April in 44, we sailed to England. Our planes took off, and we, the ground crew, sailed. It took us 10 days to get across the Atlantic. We were dodging the U-boats, they claimed,
Sure.
in a remodeled, reconditioned luxury liner. But that meant that we had we were the fourth deck down below sea level, and when the ship would go up, it'd crash down, and we'd hear it smash down. We'd pick up water, and it'd come down those four, they call them ladders, they're stairways, into our compartment where we were sleeping and wash across the floor. I realized when I got there that people might be seasick on this trip, and so I selected a bunk in the 5th level up. That is, these are just pieces of canvas strung across steel frames, and you climb up and get into bed. I figured then if anybody was sick, I wouldn't get anything on me anyway. Well, people got sick all right. Every day, it took us 10 days, every day was worse. I mean, more people were sick. In the restrooms there, if you could call it that, there were long troughs and partitions next to them, and then a seat on it, and there was seawater running underneath, and you know, everything just washed out to sea. Well, you sat on the john there and leaned forward, your head was out beyond these partitions, and then the barrels that were loose there would come sliding down as we went past a thing and bang into the wall, you know. So you'd pull your head back so you didn't get hit. After a while, the guys were putting their heads out so they get hit. They felt so bad, you know. Anyway, I kept going for 9 days to chow. I knew I had to keep eating. It was wonderful. You'd go to chow and you'd stand up. I'm worried about the sound.
Yeah, I was just thinking, let's pause it for a second. Wait for this plane to go by.
Well, you stand up. I mean, they couldn't have chairs. They'd be dangerous. And we, big tray-like things, stand around it, and we'd eat. And when the ship would rock, would take up in the air and go down, all the dishes would slam to one end. Lovely, lovely. Anyway, we got to England. Wonderful, green, wonderful. The Germans welcomed us on their radio and said they'd be over to see us. They knew all about us, what we were doing, and everything about it was terrible, but that's what happened. We were located in Mendlesham. The town of Mendlesham was the nearest one, in the county of Suffolk in England, about 70 miles northeast of London. We were right on the old Roman road that ran between Ipswich and Norwich in England. We lived on the west side of the road, and the airfield was on the east side. And the people would go out driving up and down the old Roman road, and the buses would come there, and you know, sort of, we were in England. Anyway, not only we were in England, but I remember going up one day and standing in the waist of a bomber and looking out to the side and counting the airfields out there. I counted 21 airfields. You couldn't go any direction from our field more than 5 miles before you hit another airfield. I mean, we were really jammed in there. Anyway, we put our ships up and maintained them. And it's kind of rough in a way. I understand why they did it, but it doesn't make me feel too much better. The British bombed at night. We bombed in the daytime. We bombed in the daytime so the Luftwaffe would come up to get us. We were sitting pigeons up there waiting for them. Of course, we knocked a lot of them down. That's the way it happened.
What was the reasoning behind that, do you think?
They wanted to destroy the German Air Force.
Oh, okay, so they would come up to engage, and then they would have their own fighters.
Yeah.
So the fighter wings would travel often with the bomber wings?
Yeah, like this. See, this is from,
Uh-huh.
I don't know if you can see that.
Yep, absolutely.
But that's the good
Escort service.
That's the good old escort service.
I gotcha.
They took them down, yeah. Okay. Well, anyway, the days went on, and by now it's June. Remember, I graduated from high school on June 6, 1940. It's now June 6, 1944. 2:30 in the morning, 2 o'clock in the morning, was probably about 10 minutes to 2. And I had gone out to check the lead ship who was going to take off. And I had just got back in my Jeep, went down the access roads to the hard stands. And here comes an officer walking. Now it's 2 o'clock in the morning. It's black, pitch black, you know. But I can see him well enough to see that he's got a briefcase, and I know he's an officer, so I wheeled right over next to him and I said, "Sir, may I help you?" And he said, "Yes, I'm looking for a plane." And he gave me the number of the lead ship, the one I had just left and just heard the engine start. I said, "Well, hop in, I'll try to get you there." And he hopped in, I buzzed right underneath the wing, dropped him right at the bomb base. He's hooked underneath. He was the navigator for our lead ship.
Oh.
I was, well, anyway. So
now was that what was that, a B-17 or B-25? 24, okay.
Yeah. Went back, picked up everything, straightened out things. By now it's getting light. We decided to go to breakfast because the ships are all gone. We go out and I'm walking along and I said, "Geez," I said to myself, "what a beautiful day. Beautiful sunshine, pure blue skies," and I'm walking to breakfast and I'm looking over above us, and there are 3,000 heavy bombers assembling over the top of us to go down across London on their way to D-Day.
Oh.
Yes.
So this was, what, June 5th or
6th.
June 6th, okay.
4 years after I graduated from high school.
Wow.
The planes took off at 2 o'clock in the morning. They were back at 11. We went out.
Now, of course, you and your, fellow soldiers probably didn't know. I mean, you obviously didn't know the day and the time specifically.
We knew.
But you knew that. You knew then.
We knew 2 o'clock takeoff.
But you probably didn't know until you saw them in the. Yeah. You knew it was big.
Yeah. And we said under every tree between us and Ipswich, there was a tank or a truck or something, an artillery piece or something. Under every one there was armament all over them. We knew something was going to happen soon, and when 2 o'clock takeoff, we knew. I talked to a professor after the war. He was a history professor, and he said he remembered that day too, because, and all those bombers, because he was in the OSS, and it was the only day they left their phones. He said he went out on the balcony to watch this. He said the parade was wonderful, and it was for, trying to make the English feel better to see these 3,000 bombers going to Germany, to get them. All right. Well, anyway, so the planes came back at 11. We patched up as best we could those that were there, got ready. They took up at 2 o'clock that afternoon, came back at 11 o'clock that night, took off at 2 the next morning, came back at 11, took off at 2, came back at 11, and it's my job, as I was the non-com in charge of automatic pilots, I always checked with the lead ship to see that things worked right. I went out on that second day, coming back at 11. I knew they were coming in, and he landed. He was in the taxi strip going right. I'm right behind him, follow him right down to the art stand. The pilot comes out, they can hardly talk after those kind of missions, but I was talking to him, and all at once we heard the guns go off. And we looked up, and there the ship that was coming in for the next, must have been about a third or fourth ship coming in. The Germans hit him right between the wings and the fuselage where the gasoline tanks were. He was so low he couldn't do anything, he just went in. Down in, and the plane, I think it was a Ju-88, came flying right over the top of me, you know, on the way out. And he said, "Have you got a gun?" And I said, "Yeah, I got my carbine, but, you know," he said, "Yeah, but there might be paratroopers." And I said, "Well, what do you want to do?" I mean, he's an officer and I'm a GI, you know. He said, "Well, let's go see if we can find any of them." I said, "Okay, hop in. I'll take you any place you want to go." We drove around, and he said, "Oh, I guess they're not." He gave up and went back. But on the way back in, after this episode, this plane that had hit in the ground, drove right into the ground, caught fire immediately. And the pieces of it went into the personal equipment outfit, where all the guys who were flying had dropped off their personal equipment before they took off. And it was on fire, and it's getting dark, and I ran over in there. What the guys were doing were grabbing the lockers from inside, ran them forward to the windows, passed them out to the guys on the outside, and on the outside we picked them up and took them away, trying to save the guys' equipment, you know. Well, in the confusion there, I got hit in the head.
Oh, no.
But with the sight of somebody's carbine over his shoulder, he hit me in the head. And of course, it was just a little nick, but the blood drained down my face. And I decided I would go to the hospital to see if they could patch me up. Well, I went over there, drove over. I got there, and what they had done at our base to be sure that I guess for security or something, they turned off the electricity in the hospital. And I'm in there, a whole bunch of guys in there trying to bandage them up, and I'm the only guy with the flashlight. I've got a special flashlight, you know, 2 cells here, and a long needle nose, a long necked light on, a little bitty light, which we could take into the plane, set down and work on the planes if we were working. So I gave it to them. They patched me up. They couldn't find the Band-Aids. That's what I needed. So they wrapped my whole head with bandages, and I went back to the bomb site wall, and they gave me the raspberries, of course. But that was all right. Then the next big day that I remember was the Battle of the Bulge time. That was in December of '44. See, June of '44, the invasion.
Yeah. Thus the Ardennes forest on your...
Yeah. At the Battle of the Bulge, and the weather was so bad we couldn't take off. But we had 100 missions in, and what they did for the Air Corps, when you had 100 missions on, you got a night off. You could have a party. And we bought all the liquor for miles around and going to have a party. Well, the officer in charge, of course, says to me, who's a non-com in charge, he says, "You know, you better keep somebody sober, because if there's any chance that we can fly tonight, we'll fly." I said, "Yes, sir." They went on and had their party, and they called the mission.
Oh, wow.
We had to get the women off the base. You know, they were coming from all over. Some of them went to the hospital because the guys had made arrangements. But one of our guys had made arrangement for his date, who had come from London by bus, to go over to Mrs. Rose's house. Now, Mrs. Rose's house is right next to our field. Our field was built on their farm, on all our land. And he had made arrangements for his date to stay there that night. He's too drunk. So I said, okay, I'll take her over and get her on the thing. Drove over there, picked her up, carried her into Mrs. Rose's because it was raining like mad. And went back and we had our mission. And the next morning went back and picked them up and took them to the bus on the old Roman road, and they went back out of there. Well, Mrs. Rose, I should tell you about Mrs. Rose. Mrs. Rose and Mr. Rose lived in this right next to our airfield. Just a barbed wire fence, and we had you could walk up a couple of steps over the fence and down the other side, walk to there. And they had chickens and geese and ducks, and they sold us eggs. They could sell us the duck eggs, all right. It was against the rules to sell us the chicken eggs, but it's the goose egg, the duck eggs. Anyway, I was standing in Mrs. Rose's kitchen one day, and the doorway was right flat from the barnyard right to their door. Continued right on, there was a door sill there, but right on in an earthen floor. And I was standing there. The walls of that house were about 4 feet at the base and tapered up to the thatched roof on top of it. And I was standing there and I said, Mrs. Rose, I really love your house. It's such a pleasant place. How old is it? And she said, well, dearie, I don't really know. It's only been in our family for 400 years. Oh. Now remember, it's been in their family for 400 years. When we went over to pick up the young ladies at her house the next morning, she's entertaining them. And we walk up into her kitchen, up a half a flight to her dining room. Hardwood floors, beautiful, everything is great. There's 3 or 4, I think it was 4 young women, English women. They're eating breakfast. They're eating eggs. They're feeding these gals eggs. These gals are from London. They get 1 egg a week if they can find it in London. Mrs. Rose is putting some, and she sits there. We're right at the end of the meal, and she says, "Is there anything else I could do for you, dearie?" And she's fluttering around, you know. And one of the girls, just trying to be nice, said, "Well, a glass of water would be lovely." And Mrs. Rose says, "Okay," down the stairs, comes back up, puts this glass in front of the girl. And the girl starts to pick it up and gets it about halfway to her mouth. And Mrs. Rose says, "Don't worry, dearie, if it's a little cloudy. The man from London was out just out last week, and he says it's perfectly all right." And the girl is starting to tip it up into her mouth. "But the ducks do stir it up sometimes." I couldn't believe it. They lived in the house, their family's been in the house for 400 years and they're still drinking out of the duck pond. Anyway, that was just the way it was. Anyway, back to
Did she spit out the water?
No, she'd swallowed it, but I thought she was going to explode.
Yeah.
You know, I said,
yeah.
But anyway, the Battle of the Bulge is going on, and we're bombing, and I'm getting letters from my future brother-in-law, who is with Patton's Third Army, and they're coming up and take care of the Germans. You know, they came up from the south, the Third Army did. Anyway, I got a letter from him just before the battle started. He's a corporal. 2 weeks later, I got a letter from him. He's a staff sergeant. Everybody has been killed or wounded between there in that 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Well, he continued on across Europe, walked across all of Europe with Patton.
Wow.
So that was the next thing then is just a matter of time. We're pounding it out. V-Day. V-Day.
What was the date again? It was
V-Day?
45?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Who cares?
Trying to remember.
Anyway, I'm coming back from Ipswich. I don't know how I got down there, but I was down there. I was coming back, and we came back, and the haystack right outside of right on the old Roman road is burning, and our fire department is there trying to put it out. But they have high pressure hoses, and all they're doing is blowing the straw away so they can burn again underneath, you know. Anyway, because the guys picked up all of the flare pistols out of the ships, and they had a little 4th of July. I mean, they were shooting back and forth, you know,
right.
All colors of things. And the Roses were going crazy with their thatched roof, but, you know, beside that, you know, with nothing much more to do. We had there was one mission we flew after that. 2 missions I got to tell you about. One was in France, as the Allies moved through France. There were German units cut off. There was one big group of them cut off in Bordeaux, right outside of Bordeaux. And they dug in. They had beautiful earthworks. I mean, they were really dug in. Well, so they gave them an ultimatum. They said, hey guys, we got you surrounded. You've been there for months. It's just a matter of time. Why don't you give up? And they said, no way. So then we got the mission. It was not a very nice mission, but we could fly at 10,000 feet because they had no anti-aircraft. We went in with delayed action anti-personnel and general purpose delayed demolition things. Anyway, the bombs were to crack the earthworks. The anti-personnel bombs were small. They went off from immediately upon hitting to any time within the next 10, 12, 24 hours. So that pinned them down in the earthworks, which had been broken up with the high explosives. Next day we took in gelate gasoline bombs, sewed it over, and that was the end. You know, you feel bad. I mean, they had no defense. We killed them all. But then there was another day. It was a lovely spring day. And I was out there and they said, hey, what would you like to go on a mission? And I said, hey, where to? They said, we're going to Holland. I said, okay. And I said, what are we going to do? And they said, we're going to drop food. So what we did is loaded them up with food, took off, went across. Beautiful. The sea was blue. The land when we got there was green. And then as we flew, we were just a couple 100 feet off the ground all the way in. And we dropped on every house, I believe it was every house, there was an orange flag flying for the House of Orange. They hadn't been able to fly them during the war, but they were flying them that day. And we dropped food, and then on consecutive days after that, I think about 7 days, we kept dropping food. I only went on one mission, but after the war, here in Ann Arbor, away you guys.
They're pretty courageous.
Well, they're in heat. One of them.
Oh, okay.
We're talking about squirrels.
Yeah, squirrels. For the record.
Anyway, when these Dutch people came over here, and we had a celebration at the university, and we were sort of included, they told us that what happened was the Germans had opened the dikes and flooded their fields, so there was no food available when the Germans left, and they were literally starving. They said if we hadn't dropped those days, they would have died. I don't understand the German mentality here. They knew they were losing.
Yeah.
Why aggravate the winners, you know, by being ridiculously cruel. I just, well, anyway, from then on, I got the opportunity to close down the bomb site vault at the air base. The planes took off, they went home. I and a couple of guys built crates, put all the extra bomb sites, all our equipment, everything to ship out. That was it, ready to go. The only thing I had left was my hammer and a couple of screwdrivers, and I gave them to the English workmen there. They weren't any good to me. I got on the ship, went home, had a discharge. I'd like to talk, though, just to talk about a little bit about how I felt about things.
Sure.
I was in charge of automatic pilots, the non-com in charge. I thought it was a great job, that we did something really worthwhile. What we were doing, of course, was giving the bombardier a very level, steady platform from which to bomb. But we also gave the pilot a life preserver. If the ship was hit, he could order his crew to jump out, you know. But he had to get out, and who was going to fly the plane while he was trying to get out of that ship? The pilot flew the plane.
Absolutely.
So I thought that was a wonderful thing to have.
How did the actual device work, or what was it? I mean, was it an electronic or like a manual type? I'm just curious.
It was a computer.
Really?
Electromechanical computer. What you did is they fed in, the bombardier fed in the speed, the airspeed, because he would track the target. It fed in the drift, the side drift. There was all that went in, and so the ship would fly on a straight and level course.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a wonderful deal. And in fact, the only problem was with flying bombers. The guys, it was like driving a heavy truck. It was physical work.
Yeah.
11-hour missions, and you're flying that thing, and they couldn't talk when they got on the ground. They're dead tired. Until we got the formation stick. Formation stick, a little box, a big formation stick here. You go like this, you cock it, just like you're flying a fighter plane.
Sure.
Except that you were hooked up to these mechanical devices on each of the control surfaces, the servo motors,
servos,
so that you could fly just with no effort. Save the pilots again. You know?
Wow.
So that's what we were doing. I like to say that.
Now, I imagine you probably formed a lot of good relationships with a lot of these pilots, and but you probably didn't see, I mean, you probably saw a lot of them not return, I would imagine.
Every day, one ship went down.
Every day?
Every day.
At least one?
At least one. 10 guys, every day. Every day. And when the guys would come back from the other things and go in the barracks where they were living, there was nothing there. All their things were taken away. They weren't there. We didn't know the pilots. I knew some of the pilots because I always talked to them, but no, there was not a mixture. It was, I think, to keep this morale up.
Yeah, because you don't want to. You don't want to lose your good friends.
Every day.
Yeah.
You know. Well, anyway, in my job, I checked the ships, every ship, the lead ship,
on every mission. I would go out, check it out personally before it took off to make sure. Check with it, and then I met every lead ship when they came back to make sure the pilot, the co-pilot, the autopilot worked properly. That's all I wanted to know. You know, during the Second World War, the feeling we had was that we were all in it together. We had some terrible snafus, you know, I mean, situation normally, you know, but I always just think, you know, with all our snafus and all our goof-ups and stuff, we were winning. We were winning. How bad it must have been in Germany. I always wondered, poor guys. Well, anyway, I don't know, I thought about people when we would walk from our living quarters to the airfield. We would go by agricultural fields along this old Roman road. And there would be German prisoners of war working those. And I used to wonder how they felt when they were working there and saw our ships take off every day with 6,000 pounds of bombs to go to hit their country. I don't know, but I always thought about it anyway. We had some interesting relationship with the British Army. The RAF loved it that we were there. Why did they love it? Well, see, they were on the same pay schedule that we were. And they took all the heat for having all the money from all the other guys, TIs. But when we came there, of course, we were the ones who had too much money. You know, and we were getting paid for being in a combat zone, and it was their home country.
Yeah, it's their home.
Oh yeah.
You got extra hazard pay, or?
Oh yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And you got extra pay for flying, and I was on flight pay all the time.
You were on what?
Flight pay. I flew every day.
You did?
Yeah.
You flew with the?
No. The planes would come back shot
Just
up,
to check them out.
Shot up. We would repair them. They want to be sure they work.
Then you'd take them out to test.
Take me up,
right?
And we'd flight check them.
Gotcha.
Yeah. It got so I just got in the plane and sit down and say, wake me up when we get there. Take them a couple hours. An hour to get up to 3,000 feet. They wake me up. I'd go do my test. I'd go sit down, and I'd sleep until we hit the ground again.
Wow. Okay.
I was so tired.
Right.
I couldn't, you know, I'd sleep anytime.
Right.
Well, anyway, the RAF were happy with us. The WAF, that was the British women's of the RAF, you know, were on, and the British ground girls. Well, anyway, these women were.
They had women pilots?
No, but they're on the ground.
They're on the ground.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we sat on our field, was on a little hill, and if you look northeast out of, or east out of us, you saw down to the English Channel, or the North Sea, rather, North Sea. And that's where used to come, the Germans would take the buzz bombs up there, circle around, and aim them toward London, right across us. We'd hear the buzz bombs go across, you know. We could see the anti-aircraft manned by these little gals, you know. they were all small, it seemed to me. I saw them shoot down 25 out of 26 of those buzz bombs one night.
Wow.
They were great, those little gals. Just think of them handling that ammunition and stuff.
You're kidding.
They did it, I don't know, but that was wonderful. They did it.
So these were anti-aircraft artillery Were they the chair type or the?
Well, I don't know what they're.
What? Right.
I don't know what the base is. We just saw the
You just see the fire?
Yeah, the things going down. The Army, the poor British Army, I felt so sorry for them. They didn't get paid, you know. Well, not compared to us anyway. There was one guy, he was a Scots guy. He had been in the Battle of Dunkirk. He'd been taken off the beaches there. We were in the bar one day and they were talking, and he pulled up his pant legs and showed me he had 5 bullet holes in each kneecap. See, they wanted to wound him. They didn't want to kill him. They wanted to wound him. So the British it took more manpower to get him off the beaches then. Well, anyway, this guy didn't have much money, and he loved to drink. And so he'd come to our parties. I mean, we were all retired. And what he would do is he'd get his pay. He got 20 shillings every 2 weeks. A shilling is 20 cents. He got 20 shillings every 2 weeks. And he'd put them up on the bar, order 20 pints of beer, and pass them out to us. And the rest of the 2 weeks, we'd buy beer for him. So we, you know, worked out. I just wanted to mention that we worked together, and I felt sorry for them. Oh, hey, you want to know what the British Army did? If some guy in the British Army was overseas for 5 years, he got a compassionate leave if he was married. He could come home and see his wife. How nice of them.
No kidding.
Terrible. Terrible. You know.
Now, were you married yet at this point?
What?
Were you married yet at this point?
Oh, no.
Okay.
No, no.
So you didn't have a family or anything, right?
No. D-Day. It was a great event. I know. Well, anyway, I was corresponding with many people. And one of the people was the pastor of our church. And he wrote me just before D-Day. He said, I understand we're getting ready to invade. Won't it be wonderful for the invasion? And I wrote back to him and I said, well, I don't think our 50,000 casualties are going to be very happy about this.
Mm-hmm. Was that they were estimating that to be?
That we were going to lose 50,000 people. Boy.
I've got a question. I mean, I recall in my studies in the weeks leading up to D-Day, some of the intelligence things that Eisenhower was doing, as far as some of the things I remember was putting actual inflatable balloon like tanks and weapons and to so that when aerial was taking, the enemy was taking aerial photography of the coast, it looked like they were massing up near areas where they thought we were going to cross.
Yeah.
Do you recall that? Is that?
We didn't see it.
Okay.
We didn't see it. But the only thing I saw about, well, there's so many things you saw. I remember one day going up for a flight check. Got on the plane, or when it went out on the field, and as we were getting in the plane, here we're coming across the top of us, right over our airfield, on the way going east, where the sea, I don't know what they're twin engine transports, and they're at a military designation. They were flying in formation, 3, 1, 2, 3, each with a glider on behind, for as far as I could see in the horizon, to as far as I could see in the horizon there. I got in the ship, we went up, half hour up, half hour down, landed again. They were still coming across. Those ships all had paratroopers in it. The gliders behind landed in Holland, the numbers of people that we could mass and could transport like that. It was just outstanding, you know, how things move.
Wow.
Yeah, just...
So they would put troops in the gliders and let them go, and so they could have a silent way of getting
No, it
into...
was because they were cheap. They were plywood. You know, they'd land and they'd fall apart. And right there, that was it.
Okay.
You were there. You know.
You're there.
Yeah. I want to say something about the English people. There was a very strict class distinction in England. The army, they didn't think much of it. They didn't pay them very much. And army people weren't welcome in middle class society. The people out around our airfields, you know, were very provincial. They'd been there, well, like the road is, their house, 400 years, you know. And they told us once we were I was going on leave, and I wanted to know where, you know, Mrs. Rose says, "Oh, dearie, I know just the place for you. It's right over the coast down here. I was there once." I think it was on a honeymoon she was there.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I went to London to watch My Spirits, you know. I mean, I wasn't. But anyway, one day we went to a sub-depot to pick up parts, and we were coming back. And in case you don't know, the thing they did for defense in England was to take down the road signs. So in case of invasion, nobody knew where to go. Well, here we are at the sub-depot and trying to get back to our base, and I know I'm within 5 miles of our base, and I don't know exactly where I am, but I see a young woman walking along the road. She looks about 35 to me, and I say, "Ma'am, could you tell us where Mendlesham is?" And she thought for a moment. She said, I've never been that far. She, you know, they live in one spot all the time. We, of course, the old Roman road ran through our complex. The buses were... our airfield was... our group was divided by the old Roman road. We lived on one side and the airfield on the other. And the people of England walked up and down on the road. And when if we were going to lunch and we see a young kid, you know, we say, "Hey, how about coming to lunch with us?" And he'd come to lunch, and they would finally get some food. I never saw a fat person in England. When we would go on leave or into town and wanted to go to a restaurant, we were only allowed the equivalent of $1 food. And they were hungry. And so we would meet people on the road on the way to lunch, and we'd take them to lunch. We'd drive the MPs crazy, but a lot of English people ate lunch at our mess hall. I just thought I'd mention those little things that we...
Sure.
Do you want to ask me any questions?
What did you do, when were you discharged, and what did you do after the war?
Okay. I was coming back to this country in August of 40.
Did you come back by boat again?
Yeah. The Elizabeth.
You're kidding.
Not like the one that
Not like the one on the way over.
Straight through.
This was royalty.
It was wonderful. And they dropped the A-bomb.
While you were en route?
While we were on the ocean.
Oh, wow.
And we knew, you see, we had it all arranged. We were going to have our own island out in the Pacific, and we were going to practice bomb our buddies on the next island. We had it already. We were going to go, man. We were going to have, you know, we were ready. Anyway.
What was your thought about the atom bomb? And I mean, obviously you knew it was probably a whole new ball game now, right?
Oh, we knew it was over.
Yeah.
It was over.
Yeah. Also, a whole new era of warfare. You know?
Yeah, but we didn't care about that.
Yeah, you just wanted
we were over. We were done. We cleaned them up, you know.
Yep.
All right, what did I do? I got to Camp McCoy. They said, well, guys, we were supposed to be reassigned, but go home for 30 days rest and recuperation. So I went down to Madison, rest and recuperated, you know, had a heck of a good time. Went back up, and they said, well, why did you go back for nothing? You know. So they finally got us. When did I finally get discharged? See, that was August we landed there, and I didn't get discharged until, come on, October.
October of 45.
So I had a couple of months off, but didn't do anything. I was signed up immediately for school, went back to school. They were running the school for 3 semesters a year, you know, regular semesters, and summer school wasn't summer school, it was 3rd semester.
Mm-hmm.
No time off, zipped through, got a degree, that was it.
What was your degree in?
Well, see, I listened to the government. I got sick of that after a while, but they said, you know, there's too many engineers. See, I'd been in chemical engineering before, instead of going back to, and I said to myself, well, what do they need? They're going to need school teachers for sure.
Right.
So, I was a school teacher.
You're a school teacher.
I took all of the sciences, from astronomy to zoology, everything, you know, and good background for teaching school.
Yeah.
But after you teach school for a while, oh, you know what how much I got paid the first year out of school teaching?
What's that?
$1,800
Wow.
a year.
Boy, and we complain now about the salaries.
Oh yeah, don't kid me. Well, it was at a boarding school, so I did get my meals. My wife, I was married by then, got her evening meal. Of course, you had to eat it with the kids, you know, but that was all right, you know. And we did get an apartment free, so that was all right.
How long did you teach for?
Got there 2 years, and then I decided, oh, Korean War started. And I had I had stayed in what I called the disorganized reserve because we never had meetings. But I wanted to keep a rank, you know, in case something happened. And they just sent me my discharge. And then 2 weeks later, they sent me the orders to report for duty. And I sent a copy of my discharge and said, gee, I'm sorry, guys, I can't make it. You just washed me out.
Yeah.
So I decided I had to do something else. I couldn't teach, you know. So anyway, I went back to school, got the equivalent of a bachelor's in physics. Hey, I got to tell you a story about this.
Okay.
This is something about the war.
All right.
I was taking physics at the university, and they had a Danish professor there. His name was Dr. Arro, A-R-R-O, doesn't matter. Anyway, he was teaching photography, and I took photography just so I could have a camera club, you know, in school. He said, I want to show you guys a picture, a movie that we took. He said, and he said, okay. He said, I'll have to apologize for this because the film quality is not good. He said, I couldn't get any black and white film, I just got some color film. and all I could do was process it black and white. So you'll have to, I apologize for it. He said, but here we are, and we're in the Bell Tower in Copenhagen. You see, I said at Copenhagen like the Danes do. He said, the bell is starting to ring. And we'll see the scene down below, the city, the town square, buses going by, streetcars going by, people on bicycles, people walking. The bell rings, he says, now. Everybody stopped. And I mean everybody stopped. If their foot was up on the step to go into the trolley, it stayed there. They didn't move. They got off their bikes and they stood there. Everybody stood there. And he said, here they come. That black Mercedes is the Gestapo.
Oh.
And it wheels into the thing. And they get out in their long trench coats and they're waving at people and nobody is moving. They take out some machine guns and they start shooting and nobody moves. And he said, it's over, and everything started up. I don't know how they organized that stoppage, but those Gestapo and those Germans must have been scared silly to have everybody stop, not move. Shot at him. I don't know how to. He said, you know, I said, well, what'd you do? How did you get the film? And he says, well, for a pound of butter, you get it from the Germans. They had the soldiers. I said, what if they turned you in? Well, they might slip in the canal and never get to back to their barracks, you know. And he says, and it's true, a Tommy gun does fit in a violin case. My wife is a violinist.
Oh, wow.
He said, you know, there's one thing I don't understand about your country. He said, I had another film that was taken in the prisons of the torture. And your government wouldn't let me bring it in. I don't know.
Interesting.
That's all right. I guess that's it. Yeah, that's it.
All right.
There's a lot of things, a lot of stories, but
Is there anything you want to add before we conclude? Open-ended question.
you know, in this day and age, when we worry about evolution, I think about it and I say, I sure hope there's evolution. If there isn't evolution, we're going to keep on trying to solve our problems with war.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we will evolve. I hope so.
Good point. Excellent point.
I hope so.
Well, that concludes our interview with Richard Levenick. As I mentioned, this is for the Library of Congress, Oral Veterans History Project. A copy of this tape will be sent to the Library of Congress as well as to the Ypsilanti District Library. And we'll get Mr. Levenick a copy as well. Thank you, Mr. Levenick, for your time today.
Thank you.
Yep.